Greetings and welcome to the Culture Ward, where we dissect and dismember pop culture in all its forms. My name is Jess, and today we're going to talk about video game adaptations in film, in anticipation of the imminent release of the Minecraft movie. Jack Black and Jason Momoa star in this blockbuster adaptation of the extremely popular Minecraft video game, and all I can say is so far it looks pretty weird. Although I don't know how a Minecraft adaptation would not be weird. Anyway, before we get into Minecraft, let me take you back a ways. You see, I'm an old bastard. I was a little kid in the 1980s, and so I literally grew up alongside video games. I played 8-bit games for years, and occasionally even marveled at how great the graphics were, especially going from an Atari 2600 to something like a Commodore 64 or even an NES. Until, that is, 16-bit machines came out, then the 8-bit graphics that had me starry-eyed at 10 seemed dated and useless when I was 12. Then came the 32-bit graphics, then 64-bit, and through each successive generation of consoles, the graphics and gameplay of the previous generations seemed outdated and obsolete. However, through every generation, there have been iconic game titles that would be imprinted upon the public consciousness and would perpetually invite nostalgia, as well as new modern installments in those franchises, keeping them always firmly rooted in the zeitgeist. These are the games that, usually, inspire franchises and spin-offs, including other games as well as expanding into other mediums. In particular, Hollywood has tried to capitalize on popular, iconic video game titles for as long as there have been iconic video game titles, with, let's just say, mixed results. The very first video game-based feature film was Super Mario Bros., released in 1993 starring Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo as the title characters. The movie bombed, and the critics almost universally hated it. However, it has since developed a rather cult following. Probably what it's most famous for is causing Nintendo to refuse to license another film based on its IP for 30 years, when they finally made the animated Super Mario Bros. Film in 2023 that made like $1 gazillion. Not a great start to the new genre, but it wasn't without its merits. Super Mario Bros. Was actually fairly innovative in the use of special effects, utilizing new methods of combining then novel digital effects with practical ones, and both the lead actors did the best they could with the script. The main problem was that it lacked the color, tone, and jauntiness of the games it was based on, something they obviously corrected for in the 2023 animated version. Not to be dissuaded, Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat released in 1994 and 95 respectively, both being moderately financially successful. However, they were also both panned by critics, Street Fighter more so than Mortal Kombat. I remember seeing Mortal Kombat in the theater. I was a huge fan of the game on Sega Genesis, and actually really enjoyed it. It was stupid, campy, and overblown, but it was pure, frenetic fun, and really did capture the spirit of the game. Lara Croft Tomb Raider was released in 2001, featuring Angelina Jolie as the titular character. Again, this movie made a boatload of money while still earning negative critical reviews. However, not all critics agreed. Roger Ebert, for instance, gave it 3 out of 4 stars, saying, "Lara Croft Tomb Raider elevates goofiness to an art form. Here is a movie so monumentally silly, yet so wondrous to look at that only a churl could find fault." The second Tomb Raider movie, rather clunkily titled Lara Croft Tomb Raider: The Cradle of Life, released in 2003. It saw Angelina return to less fanfare than the previous installment, and while it still managed to eke out a profit, it essentially killed the franchise. The first Resident Evil adaptation was released in 2002, starring Mila Jovovich as the lead character. It also confounded critics by tripling its budget at the box office and spawning multiple sequels. The second Resident Evil installment, subtitled Apocalypse, released in 2004, surpassing the initial film's gross while still disappointing critics. A third installment, titled Extinction, was released in 2007 and earned even more money than either of the first two, a trend that would continue. Afterlife in 2010 made $300 million, Retribution in 2012 made $240 million, and the final chapter in 2017 made $312 million worldwide. It wasn't until Welcome to Raccoon City in 2021 that a Resident Evil film failed to top the box office, only earning about $40 million on its $25 million budget, meaning that it almost certainly lost the studio money. Coincidentally, or not, it was also the first Resident Evil not to star Mila Jovovich. Silent Hill was released in 2006, starring Laurie Holden and Sean Bean. It, like Resident Evil, is based on a survival horror video game of the same name, with a lot of supernatural elements. The film was a moderate success, earning $100 million on a $50 million budget, but what was interesting about it was that it also sold 1.3 million DVDs in the first 4 weeks it was available. Like most other films on this list, critics were not impressed with the movie, although retrospective reviews have been kinder to this one. The trend of big-budget video game adaptations making tons of money at the box office while being simultaneously loathed by critics continued throughout the next 2 decades. Movies like Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time made $336 million. Need for Speed made over $200 million. Warcraft in 2016 earned a whopping $439 million worldwide with a 29% Rotten Tomatoes score. Assassin's Creed, starring Michael Fassbender, made $240 million worldwide with a 19% on Rotten Tomatoes. The rebooted Tomb Raider released in 2018, the one not starring Angelina Jolie, somehow earning $274 million, as well as the highest critic score of any video game adaptation to date, scoring 48 out of 100 on Metacritic. It wasn't great, but it did seem to hint at the notion that video game adaptations could be well written. The movie Rampage, starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, was also released in 2018. Based off the rather obscure video game franchise of the same name, I remember the game and even played it a handful of times when I was young, but it was far from a marquee title with a huge fan base, so I was shocked to see this movie earn almost $500 million. I guess The Rock, in a huge big-budget action spectacle, is bound to bring in audiences. Pokémon Detective Pikachu and Sonic the Hedgehog released in 2019 and 2020, and both did remarkably well, both in box office draw and, for video game movies anyway, decent reviews. Furthermore, Sonic launched a franchise. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 earned over $400 million, and Sonic 3 nearly broke $500 million. Perhaps most perplexing of all is that the Sonic film franchise, which just seems ridiculous to me, are among the best-rated video game movies of all time, with the third installment carrying an 85% fresh score on Rotten Tomatoes. Uncharted was released in 2022. Despite the oddball casting decisions, Tom Holland is great as a teenage Peter Parker, but Nathan Drake is supposed to be a rather more burly guy in his 30s, and well, Tom just doesn't fit the profile to me. But it still performed well, earning over $400 million, even though the reviews were less than stellar. Now, admittedly, I've only discussed the films that were successful in the genre. There were at least as many that were flops, bombs, and abominations, such as Tekken, for instance, that was released in 2010, which barely made $1.5 million on a $30 million budget, and actually holds a 0% Rotten Tomatoes score. There have also been a handful of animated features, most notably the Angry Birds movies that were both financial successes, and the Super Mario Bros. Movie I mentioned earlier that made $1.3 billion. So what does this list of movies tell us about Minecraft? Well, basically it tells us that video game adaptations, even those based on weird premises with limited audiences like Rampage, can make money. There's almost always a nostalgia factor to these movies, and a novelty factor, seeing the video games we grew up playing in live action. And we see with certain properties that have a large fan base and rich history of development, like Mario Brothers, that the box office draw can be truly enormous. And we can also posit that it doesn't always have to be a great movie, at least by critical standards. As long as it reflects the world the game is based on and hits all of the nostalgia buttons, it can be a financial success. So where does Minecraft fall in here? Let me start by saying that I have personally never been a fan of the video game. First of all, I'm just outside the target demographic. By the time this game launched in 2011, I was already well into my 30s, with children of my own, and while I still enjoyed video games, I usually gravitated toward more mature content. But more importantly, as indicated earlier, I grew up in the 8-bit world of 80s gaming. I played all those retro games when they were brand new, cutting-edge games. And I loved them then, but I was always excited for the next generation of gaming. I like the fact that video game graphics are getting closer and closer to photorealistic. I don't find novelty in retro graphics because I lived through them in real time. And while this game probably would have captivated a 12-year-old me, the 30, 40-something me, not so much. But hey, I still recognize it's an important game and has inspired a whole new generation of gamers and dreamers. It is a staggeringly huge open-world adventure game with a particular focus on crafting and building, and has received universal acclaim from gamers and critics alike. My kids love it, and I've seen them create some pretty amazing things on it. It's also extremely popular as the best-selling video game of all time. By 2021, Minecraft has sold over 200 million copies and had more than 100 million active monthly players, which means this thing has the potential to be one of the biggest video game adaptations ever made. I don't know how you adapt a game like Minecraft though. Apparently it wasn't easy. This thing went into production in 2014, not long after Microsoft acquired Mojang, the studio responsible for creating Minecraft, for $2.5 billion. Multiple filmmakers with conflicting creative visions came and went, followed by COVID and the SAG-AFTRA strikes, all combining to make this one of the longest production cycles ever for a video game adaptation. There was also a cast reshuffle. Steve Carell was originally supposed to play Steve, but he was replaced by Jack Black, who obviously brings a whole new type of energy to the movie, for better or worse. I guess you can see by the trailer that it looks pretty goofy and weird, but that could also be a good thing. If it doesn't take itself too seriously and just makes a fun and visually faithful adaptation, I think people will respond. As long as they keep their bullshit politics out of it and aim for family-friendly fun, it shouldn't have too much trouble. I also imagine that a large part of the fan base is still pretty young, so again, a format that leans into weird and lightweight comedy might just be the secret sauce. But that's the thing with these movies. Very few have ever been hailed as, quote, good movies, although quite a few have been financially successful. It's just that there is a vast difference in these formats. People don't take them seriously, which can be a good thing as long as the movies don't take themselves too seriously, and it can be just 2 hours of escapist fun. But it's never going to elevate it to high art. I guess no one is really expecting Minecraft to win Best Picture, luckily. But if it's funny, Jack Black certainly has the potential to be funny, and hits the right beats and pushes the right nostalgia buttons, I reckon this movie can be a financial monster. However, I suspect you may need to turn off your brain and just enjoy the visuals and humor. I guess we'll see. Minecraft the movie drops April 4th only in theaters. Are you going to see it? How do you think this movie will stand up to other video game adaptations? Let me know in the comments. As always, please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Bye for now. I hope to see you next time in the Culture War.